look at the 12th task, which says we should update our console.py, which is our command interpreter, to retrieve the number of instances of a class, and the users is class name.count, like user.count followed by braces, series.count followed by braces. So here this is my function definition. So for us to do this, to get to retrieve all the number of instances of a class, like retrieve the number of occurrence of an instance of a particular class, we are going to first retrieve all the stored classes and their instances or their objects, since we are going to be keeping a head count for each instance of a specific class. So we are going to say objects is equal to, we go to storage and call all to retrieve it. Again, since we are expecting an argument, like we are expecting something like user.count or series.count, we will first go to our default method. And then we are going to update this method dictionary to include count method, because if we don't include count method here, we will always get an error if we try to run any of this. Remember that this is seen as invalid syntax. So we are going to come here and add count. We are going to add count here. So now that we've added count, the reason why we are adding count here is because what we are expecting, let me just type this out. What we want to do is to implement this do count method as if we are expecting to get this kind of command from the command line, because we know if we should enter this kind of command, we are going to get an error, thanks to for our default method which handles this for us. So if we should enter city.count, what it's going to do is to come here, go through this process, split it, and then construct a method call for us that is going to look like this count method, which is a valid syntax. So what we're going to do with this count method is to now implement the method in such a way that when this default constructs this kind of format for us and sends it and executes it, this method is going to take it up and do what is asked for it. So let's go ahead. I need to push this down. So after we've updated the method dictionary of the default method, we are going to, as I've said before, we are going to implement this count method as if we were expecting a format like this, because we already have the default to handle the format user.count or city.count. So that being said, we will split and assign the incoming arg to the variable. So we say command is equals to because since we are assuming that we are expecting a format like this, so now we know that the first index of this command, after splitting, the first index is going to be user. Let's assume that we are calling for the user class. We are trying to count the user class. So what we are going to do is we are going to save it as incoming class name. So we say incoming class name is equal to command 0. So we shouldn't forget that this, when we split this, if we get calling count city, or we are calling count user from the command line, and then we use shields to split it, that the shields module will not be able to see this count. It will only it only sees what comes after this command count, just like I've explained before. That's why after splitting, this command is going to have a list. It's going to have just a list, just one item in the list, which is user. So that's why we're assigning this one item at index 0, which is the only item in the list, as incoming class name. So again, the next thing we are going to do is we are going to initialize an attribute called count to 0, because we are going to use it to keep the count of occurrences of a class instance. So now we are going to check if there is a command from the user. If there is a command from the user, so we just say if command. So if there's a command from the user, we are going to check if the incoming class name, if this incoming class name from the user is in the list of valid classes. So we say if incoming class name is in the list of valid classes. Now if it is in the list of valid classes, we are going to iterate through all the stored objects. So we are going to say for object in objects.values, objects.values, and then we are going to check each stored class against the incoming class name. We are going to check each stored class name against this incoming class name. We are going to see if we find a match. So we say if the object dot class dot, which is the class name, is the same with incoming class name, which means if there is a match, we are going to increase count by 1. So this loop will continue, and once there's a match, count will increase by 1 until it goes through all the instances of a particular object. And then once it's done, that is after the successful count of the class objects, we are going to print the number of occurrences. So we say print count, and then of course here we said if incoming class name is invalid classes, so we have to handle the case we have to print something, or handle the case if the incoming class name is not in the list of valid classes. So we are going to say else print I've forgotten what we have to print, but I'll just print invalid class name, you can go ahead and check what we have to print. And then again, we have to also handle what we are going to do if there is no accompanying class name. Like if we enter a command like say only count without saying count user, that is followed by the name of the class. So we are going to say we are going to print again. I'm not sure this is what we are supposed to print, but I believe you understand. So let's run this. So the command should be okay. If we say count, okay, it's crazy. I understand why that is happening. We can still write a check to handle that, but that's not in the scope of this one. Let's just say count user 2. Okay, first let's display user. Say user the all. So we see that user is 1, 2. So if we say count user, it displays 2. If we say user dot count, it also displays 2. Is displaying this because of, let me take out the print statement from the default method. Save, go back to count, print clear, and run again. So if we say okay, user dot count, yeah, it says 2. If we say city dot count, it says 1. So what this default method, let me just codify something again. What this default method is doing for this count method is whenever we see a command like user.count, what the default is doing is to extract user as class name and count as the method name. Then it's going to check if count is in the method dictionary and also check if the class name is in the list of class name. And then if they are, as if it's in the list of valid class name, so if they are, the default method will construct a method call here. It's going to construct a method call that will look like this: count city or count user, that is with the right syntax. And then it's going to execute it, or should I say it's going to move it back, pass it back to do count method. And then count method, if he sees count user from the default, is going to split. And since the shells is only going to see the user, so it splits this, and the user will be the item at the index 0, which is the class name, incoming class name, and we save it as a variable, incoming class name, and then the code continues. So let's handle this case where if we run this and say count, we get out of index, list index out of range. So I guess all we have to do is to just say we are only going to save save the first index as incoming class if there is actually a command that's passed if this arg is not empty. That is, if the only thing that comes in the command line is not just count itself, because according to this cmd module, if we are only entering count or all or update, it means that the argument is none or empty. So if we save this and try this again, should be okay. If we say count, now we say class name missing. Yeah.